Welcome, everyone. I'm James Shore, and this is the Art of Agile Development Book Club. In fact, today is the last Art of Agile Development Book Club. We have made our way through the entire book. We are closing with a discussion of optimizing outcomes, which is really about achieving everything that Agile promises, but most companies have trouble achieving. Joining us for a conversation today are two people that have had a huge influence on me and my understanding of Agile, Mary and Tom Poppendieck. Mary and Tom wrote the classic book Lean Software Development in 2003, which outlined the application of lean principles to software engineering. Subsequent books included Implementing Lean Software Development, published in 2006, Leading Lean Software Development in 2009, The Lean Mindset in 2013, and over the past 2 decades, they've extended those ideas at www.leanessays.com. I am thrilled to have them on the show. Mary and Tom, welcome.
Good to be here. Really interesting to see the various people you've been talking about your book with.
Yeah. It's been a great run, and I'm so happy to have the two of you help us close this out because you've, as we'll get to, you've always talked about, I think, Agile at its best, not just sort of how do we barely get by, but what does it look like when you're really doing things at its best, and that's what I'm looking forward to talking with you about today. I'm going to get things started by reading an excerpt from The Art of Agile Development. As a reminder, the second edition is out now in both ebook and print editions, and you can get it from Amazon by visiting jamesshore.com/s/buyaoad2. And excerpts and bonus materials are available at jamesshore.com/s/aoad2, including recordings of these book club sessions, which we now have a book club for every single part of the book. So check those out. There's, as Mary mentioned, we've had some great guests, some great conversations. Part 4, Optimizing Outcomes. October has rolled around again. Last year, your team achieved delivering fluency, see Part 3. At the time, some team members wanted to push for optimizing fluency too, but management was skeptical. You couldn't get the support you needed. Since you've achieved delivering fluency, though, your team has been firing on all cylinders. Productivity went way up. Defects way down. Hannah, your product manager, was having trouble keeping up. She delegated more and more responsibilities to the team, which rose to the challenge. It got noticed. Hannah was singing your praises to the marketing director, and your boss was talking you up to the engineering director. The time was right to push for optimizing fluency again. This time, it worked. Hannah was assigned to join your team full time. Not only that, she got a permission to try the Agile experiment. The Agile experiment is what they're calling the way Hannah works with your team. Instead of having to go through a yearly planning exercise like the rest of marketing, she got permission to own your team's financials. She meets with her boss regularly to share statistics such as revenue and customer retention, and she's constantly trying out new ideas and experiments. Her colleagues are jealous. They still have to go through 6 weeks of budget and target setting hell every year. It's not just Hannah. The whole team is getting in on the action. Although Hannah is first among equals when it comes to product marketing expertise, other members of the team have developed their own areas of expertise. Shayna, in particular, loves visiting customer sites to see how people work. Shayna's just asked for the team's attention. I just finished a remote session with Magda, she says. You all remember Magda, right? Nods all around. Magda is a developer who works for one of your new customers. Her company is bigger than your normal customers, so they've been pretty demanding. Magda's company has been dealing with an increasingly complex tax situation, Shayna continues. They have remote employees in more and more countries all over the world, and dealing with the various taxes and employment law is overwhelming. Magda's heading up a team to automate some of that work, and she wanted to know how to integrate with our API. But it got me thinking. Shayna's voice raises in excitement. That isn't too far up from what we do already. What if we sold an add-on module for international employment? It's a lot of work, but we could start one country at a time. And Bo, you have some experience in this area, right? Bo nods thoughtfully. Hannah purses her lips. It's a big bet, she says, but it could have a huge payoff. This could crack open the market for more companies like Magda's. It would definitely widen our moat. None of our direct competitors have anything like that, and the big players charge 2 arms, a leg, and half your torso in professional services fees. Plus, we're a lot more user-friendly. She grins. It has a lot of teeth. We'd only need to charge an arm and a leg. What do the rest of you think? Your team engages in a rapid-fire discussion of the idea. As you come to the consensus that it's worth pursuing, Hannah nods sharply. I love it. We'll need to validate the market and figure out how to break it down into smaller bets. I'll put a story on next week's plan to come up with build, measure, learn experiments. We can start on them after we release our current increment. In the meantime, I'll do some research and run it by the boss. If the experiments work out, we'll need her to approve more funding and a change to our mission. Thanks, Shana, she finishes. This is why I love being part of this team. So that is an introduction to the ideas of optimizing outcomes. It's really about a team that has full ownership and responsibility about the business outcomes that they create. Okay, let's get started with our first discussion prompt. Mary and Tom, optimizing outcomes depends on a truly cross-functional team with a clear purpose and ownership over its business decisions. Now, I know you have experience, Mary, at 3M doing that sort of work. What does it look like in practice?
Well, I could make a description of the way 3M does it, but I want to try a more recent concept. I think it looks in practice like a small startup company. Mm-hmm. A startup company owns their own outcomes. They live or die, have jobs or not, based on how successful they are with customers. And it's not even necessarily how profitable they are, but how successful they are engaging customers. There's a company in Oslo, Norway called Iterate that we've been working with for a lot of years. And they were a consulting firm. Three of their four founders went to our very first class in Oslo in 2006 or something like that. And they formed a consulting firm and they were extremely successful. But what they wanted to do was to provide the best place to work that there was, because they hated the consulting firm that they were working for. And after several very successful years, in fact, they were many times rated one of the best places to work in Norway. They decided they couldn't be a consulting firm anymore and keep their people happy, because consultants have to do what other people want them to do. Mm-hmm. They don't get to do their own thing. And the really good people wanted to have the ability to do something, their own thing that's important to them, rather than help other people to do their own thing. So they changed. It was a very big bet. It happened in the 2016, 17, 18 timeframe, from a consulting firm to a startup incubator. In the process, they lost one of their founders who was not interested in their new way of looking at the world and went off and joined a solar company instead. He was their CEO. But they formed a company which funded themselves on consulting for a while, but formed small teams that started up new businesses. And at this moment in time, they have spun off several successful new businesses. And what they did was they took a few years to figure out how a team looks. And the most important thing that they found was that there had to be at least one or two people with a passion for something, that really wanted something to happen. And it didn't matter if it was creating a farm to market path for produce in Norway or whatever. They had to be passionate about something. And they discovered that if you had a passionate one or two people that were leading the charge on a team, that team almost always found a way to make things happen. So it is like a startup company, but it is also a couple of people who have some passion about what the organization is all about, and actually some say in what it is that the organization is doing. In the thing that you read, we just had, I forget her name, but the person had her own idea about what would be neat. And she felt so good because other people were going to take her idea and run with it. And it's when people have a passion about something and they get some folks to help them out and work with them and head down whatever path it is to make that thing work. That's one of the things I think that really creates a team that is looking for outcomes. And the outcomes can vary. They can be financial. They can be people able to do something new and different. They can be, typically they're not actually financial, because you know what? It's hard to get that passionate about financial results. But it's really easy to get passionate about other stuff. One of the guys at this company was passionate about Norwegian knitters. And the reason was because he could take out the middleman on shopping and have customers directly contact knitters to knit them sweaters. And they have this concept that they're removing a lot of waste from the supply chain and creating a better planet because of it. Now, I wouldn't have thought that was something to be passionate about, but they were. At least the leader was, and got a few more passionate people together. And they created an amazing company that started out by having knitting, contacting up customers with knitters. And then they added more direct contact things. And their whole concept has grown quite a bit. So I think that it looks like a group of people with at least a couple that are really, really interested in making something happen. And everybody else, they sort of bring into the fold and say, wouldn't this be cool? And everybody is interested and passionate about it.
That's fantastic. I love that emphasis that it's about the passion. And when I think about, there's far more places that I've worked or talked to that have not succeeded at reaching this level of fluency than those that have had done so. And when I think about one of the major differences, it is that passion. Like I've been fortunate to have some teams that really did have this sort of total ownership. And when I look at them, I can always name somebody who is sort of, had this guiding light of what are we all about.
A number of years ago, we did a co-presentation with one of the big names in the open source movement. And this was at an Agile conference. And he said that we get excellent results, just like really good practitioners of Agile do, but we don't use most of the Agile practices.
We being the open source.
The open source groups. He said the big difference between the way open source works and the way Agile or the way traditional approaches work is that we care. We really deeply, profoundly care about the results of the work that we're doing. And that all by itself lets us do excellent things.
Now you had said, Mary, that you'd said that it also looks like a startup. But is this something that is only really accessible to those smaller, more startup-y style companies?
Well, you can definitely do startups inside of companies. That's what we did at 3M. 3M was really a handful of startups that grew into businesses. And it always maintained that. But I don't think that having people follow their passion is something that's exclusive to small businesses. If it were, that would really be a shame. That means you can't join a big company and be excited and passionate about what you're doing. And I don't think that's true. In fact, why would you join a company and spend your life doing stuff that you don't really care about?
Yeah.
So what you're looking for is people who really care about the results of what they're doing. And that isn't limited to small companies. But if you want a model of how a team would look, it would look like a small company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things about that is that the team has one or two people who are essentially the leaders because they're the ones that are the most passionate and bringing the others along to see their vision. Now, that isn't something that people in Agile talk about a lot, but I have seen the concept of somebody that really cares and that really sort of focuses a team on an important goal to be something I find in a lot of places where I see really good teams. And I saw that at 3M. I see that at Iterate. Each one of their teams has one or two passionate people that lead up the team and make things happen. And if you're looking for purpose, you're also looking for not everybody going in 5 different directions, but one or two people who say, this is where we need to go. And the other people saying, yep, let's head in that direction. And there will be a leader or two by some other name, not CEO necessarily, but something like that, that have the vision of where the group is headed. and the other people like the vision, and therefore they follow it.
Yeah, yeah. A quick reminder for everybody: this is a call-in show, so your participation is very welcome. Please just raise your hand in Zoom to share your thoughts or comments or ask questions of our guests. I'm going to switch gears, I think. Oh, actually, I just saw
There's a hand
from David. So, David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, James, and hi, Tom and Mary. I saw you guys talking on mob mentality the other day, and you talked about this person that sits between the team and the customer. And now we're also talking in a similar energy about a person that helps to lead the team. And I'd love to explore the nuance of the difference between those two people. If you could speak to that.
So I'm sure that in that thing, when I talk about a person between the team and the customer, that person gets in the way. Did I not say something like that? Yeah,
precisely.
They keep the team from having immediate connection with the customer. What somebody with passion does is share their passion in such a way that the team heads in the same direction and gets direct contact with the customer. It's not telling the team what to do. It's getting the team deeply engaged in the mission so that they will have direct contact with the customer. There's a really big difference between here's customer, here's somebody that figures everything out and then directs the team. There's no passion there. And somebody that really cares about making something happen and gathers up other people and inspires them to head in the same direction. That would be the difference.
That's a great clarification. Thanks for bringing up that point, David.
Thank you. Yeah.
Dan has a comment. I'm going to invite Dan on up. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. We mentioned that often like startups or incubators, you'll kind of see this in. Two places I've seen it in larger enterprises is I've seen it pop up in a mobile team where someone goes like, we need this thing, the smaller thing that doesn't exist in an organization. And the group someone spearheads it and that group gets going. And really is tracking how many customers are using it, the numbers coming in, almost another channel, a small channel becomes its own vertical within the company. Also less, but I've seen it in companies and participated in it, where a company will take like a 1% maintenance fee, like 1% of the website's profits and direct it towards a maintenance team that's just going after improvements of the infrastructure and kind of clean up. And both of those seem to be this really clear, this is how much money's coming in, really clear, this is how much it costs you internally. In both those cases, sometimes I've seen that work go on to inspire and influence horizontally other things. And other times I've seen that work start to get big enough where people care about it. And then they go, well, you shouldn't be running this all on your own. We're going to go ahead and take over from here. So both how the organization reacts to that has been interesting to be a part of.
Yeah,
so I'd like to comment on something he just said.
Yeah, please.
So when I worked at 3M, if a team created a new product that became massively successful, they got to run that business. They didn't, nobody was allowed to come and say, this is too big, somebody else has to run it for you. And I can remember my mentor and I were talking with a very senior vice president who was complaining to my friend because he had a successful startup team that was so successful in selling so much stuff and he was not by policy allowed to change who was in charge, but they were all new and young and naive. And he says, here I am manually myself scheduling manufacturing plants because I can't really tell them what to do, but they're selling so much more stuff than they ever planned for. And because if you were successful, you got to run the business, everybody was way more interested in it. The idea that if a team is successful, you take it away from them, that doesn't work. That's ridiculous. Yeah. That's exactly the way to kill it.
I want to sort of jump on this idea, and thanks very much for your comments, Dan. This idea of the team really being in charge, and that the finances coming into the team and they have some say over what happens with those finances and how they're spent. Now, you talked just a little bit, Mary, about what that looked like at 3M, but I know that companies struggle with this. Like, this is really hard for a lot of companies. How do you see them like grapple with that problem?
I'm not sure. Why is it hard? I got to throw that one back at you. What is it that they're finding difficult?
Well, in my experience, and maybe this is a little cynical, I think it's the loss of control and the changes to power structures.
Yeah. Okay. So if a company is built around control and power structures, there's not much you can do about it. Mm-hmm. Because that company is rewarding people by giving them more powerful positions. You have to have a company that rewards something other than being in control and being in charge.
When Diana and I produced the Agile Fluency Model, and this is the optimizing zone of the Agile Fluency Model that we're talking about here, we went around and we talked to a lot of folks about the different zones, and we'd run surveys and said, raise your hands if you think your teams are fluent in this zone. And for this zone in particular, we saw very few hands coming up. And of course, what I want to do as somebody who's teaching people about the possibilities of Agile is I want to see them create change so they can get to fluency in this zone. But it sounds like you might be saying that this is fundamentally a structural issue and that companies can either get there or don't based on their existing structure.
Well, I think it's not structure so much as reward system. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do people get rewarded with? What is looked upon as rewardable behavior? And what are the metrics of the senior management? If you take a look at the metrics of any manager in between, say, a team and the CEO, whatever those metrics are what the people at that level are going to respond to. There's almost no way that can't be true. So the question is, what metrics are managers being held responsible for? And at 3M, every single product had its own P&L. And then a division was a group of there was a project that was a group of P&Ls, and then the division was a group of projects. And every single dollar that was spent in the company was assigned to a P&L. And then the P&Ls rolled up into the division, and the division vice president was responsible for the margins on their P&L. Actually, not even the revenue, but the margins. And because that was the major thing that everybody was looking at, what they did was anything which would increase the margins. And having teams chase after good margin products was a good thing to do because the vice president got rewarded for that. If the vice president were rewarded for something else, cost reduction, for example, which is true in many IT departments, then what they're going to chase after is cost reduction. And you can't help a person who's basically rewarded on cost reduction visualize spending money to be entrepreneurial. Like, it's not in their reward system. It's not in the way that they are. Everybody looks to their immediate supervisor to say what is good, and what is rewarded by that next person up the ladder is what is good. And if the next person up the ladder is rewarding something other than stuff that makes people passionately pursue, useful things for customers, then that's really hard to overcome.
I view all of these things as architecture questions. There's architecture of the software, of course, and that has been evolving over the decades and has made dramatic advantages. Agile is another modification of architecture, not so much of the software architecture, but team architecture. Organizational architecture is what we've just been talking about. What is it that structures, that organizes, that provides links and feedbacks in the way the organization functions? And that, I think, is fundamentally, as you suggested, the structural problem about the way people think about their purpose in the organization. If you structure it to reward primarily shareholders, you're going to have different decisions made, and ultimately squash passion that you need in order to produce good results in the first place.
So what would you advise for somebody who's listening to this show, really wants to see the types of things we're talking about, this, what I'm calling optimizing fluency, but is really about your lean ideas and what the promise of Agile, but doesn't have the power to change reward structures? What can they do?
But doesn't have the power to change reward structure.
We were asked that question 20 years ago for exactly that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Today, those people that ask the questions are vice presidents.
Mm-hmm.
They have changed the reward structure. When you get into a position with more power, you can change the reward. If you have a leadership position, even a team leadership position, the leader produces rewards for all the team members. It may not be monetary, but even just recognition, encouragement, the choice of work that you make available to the different people, how you communicate the results, the impact of what they're doing. All of these things are ways of making differences, even if you don't have top-level reward structure options. A lot of people today are changing their reward structure by changing their boss.
But as Tom said, think of 10 years and 15 years when you are going to be in the management level, because a lot of people have, and we've been, as he said, we've been contacted by a lot of people who said, remember that course you gave me like 10 or 12 or 15 years ago? Now I'm a vice president. Could you come and do the same thing for the people in my organization so they understand, the way that I really wish that they would think? So you might not be able to change your organization now, but over time, you will probably get to a spot where you can. And the question is, will you?
Yeah. Well, this has apparently triggered some thoughts in Diana, who's the co-creator of the Agile Fluency Model, and whose thinking has had a lot of influence on the book as well. Diana, welcome.
Hi, Mary and
Hello
Tom.
there.
It's
Hi,
so
Diana.
good to see you.
You too.
Been far
It's
too
been such a
long.
long time. I love what you've just been talking about, and I think that one of the things that's missing in our thinking about Agile is that sometimes it's a long game. Sometimes we have to just continue to do the best we can from where we are. What's that? In thinking about all kinds of things Agile, I keep coming back to slicing. What's the first next small step I can take toward making things better? And not always thinking in the conventional way about compensation and benefits, but what other kinds of rewards could I offer? And there are many. And it's just, I just wanted to draw a big dark line under what you just said and put exclamation points on either side of it, because it's so important.
Well, people don't work for compensation and benefits. They don't put out all their best efforts for money and benefits.
That's for sure.
Those are maintainers. They have to have enough money to live well, to feed their family, but
and it has to feel
passion comes
equitable
from someplace else.
Yeah,
Quote
the
a famous
compensation and
presenter,
benefits have to
"It
feel
depends."
equitable. Yeah.
It's a handle.
Yes, always. Thank you so much. Thank you for showing up today. Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks
great.
for your comments, Diana. Steve has a comment. Steve, welcome.
Great. Thank you, Mary, Tom. Big fan, long time listener to Jim's. So I'm a coach. I've been a coach for a while. And one of the things that I do that my passion is creating XP teams and groups. And I do that successfully, but they're generally short-lived within the organization. And what they're talking about is the light bulb moment for me is don't have a passion for the work. Maybe it's mobile provider X, insurance flavor Y. I don't care. My passion is the team and how we work. Now, I was at Blue Cross where we had a passion for getting fast agile to work. And we really got that working well. And we pitched the idea to a VP to spin us off to our own group, to spin us off as a wholly owned subsidiary, sell us to other Blues. They didn't have the vision. That group sort of degraded over time and I left. But there's a core group still left that is that ember keeping that passion going. And they are starting to do that. So, yeah, it's the light bulb moment of not just a passion for creating a high-performing team, but influence the organization as a passion.
Team is only one part of the architecture.
Yep. Thank you.
Looks like Dan has another comment. Dan, welcome back.
Thank you. I wanted to quickly add one more thing to think about in reward structure. So similar to these groups in enterprises, the reward structure was key. Some of them are wrong, but the other kind of attack vector was like regulation and release and deployment. It quickly became dangerous. So for those groups, one of the key things is CD and SRE. If you can really get serious about, because it's not just, are you making money, is you have our name on you. Are you doing something dangerous, which we could get sued or could spread into the larger company? So quickly also really embracing the quality in which you do the work and in which you deliver and making it safe for the company. That can be one more reason that inspires outside of the monetary reward structure.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to change direction. I think there's, obviously a lot of interest in this topic, but there's so many things we can talk about with regards to these ideas. And you had mentioned earlier, Mary, I think it may have been Dan, I don't remember who brought it up, but this idea of the direct connection with customers and with stakeholders. Let's say that we've successfully created the change, maybe only in a single team, because it doesn't have to be the whole organization, but we've got a team that's really firing on all cylinders, does have that great connection with the customers. How can that team make the most of that connection?
One of the most important things is to avoid proxies. Okay, so you say direct connection, but what you want to be sure of is that what the team is doing is based on feedback from that connection. They're not aiming at some objective that isn't making the customers happier or improving life for customers. So if you have some intermediary metric, a proxy of any type, then the connection just isn't going to work. So you have to look at what are the team's goals and objectives. What are they spending their time thinking about how to do? And I want to give an example here. And it also shows how you can actually possibly use financial metrics as one of those things. Maybe 6 or 8 years ago, T-Mobile customer service changed the way that they structured. They decided that their customer service call-in was usually dealing with tough problems because the easy problems were all handled on the web. So they reorganized so that they have teams of approximately 30 people. And remember, these guys are available 24 hours a day, so they rotate in with some technical experts and a team leader and stuff like that. And there's responsible for maybe 120, 150,000 customers in the same location. And they will have their desk, showing that, it's ski time now, even if it's not in our location. It might not be right next to us, but they'll know that area of the country and that neck of the woods. And they make the teams responsible for solving every single problem on the first call or figuring out how to get it solved so that in the end, the customers are happy. And I have had T-Mobile for many years, and they have these people called team of experts. And if you talk to somebody on a team of expert, they figure out how to solve the messiest, trickiest problem. And then each particular team has responsible for the profit and loss of that 120,000 customers. for their financial, for their retention, and that sort of thing. So as an example, they gave the most interesting example. There was a team that was responsible for an area in Utah, and they noticed that as the young folks got to a certain age, they gave up all their mobile service because they were going out on mission. And you can't have a cell phone, at least at that time, you couldn't have a cell phone on mission. And so the team was sitting down, brainstorming what to do about that. And somebody said, yeah, but you could have a tablet. So why don't we offer them a tablet connection instead as a sort of substitute if they decide to cancel their service? And so they tried, and it was extremely popular. And all of those customers they used to lose, most of them switched to tablets. And then once the mission was over, they switched back to phone service. And the profit and loss of this particular group was just amazing because they were able to retain so many of the customers that they used to lose. Why? How did they figure this out? Because they had like 20 or 30 people brainstorming, and some people were tightly connected with the customers and understood the way that their customers were thinking and brought up ideas on how to address that particular problem. That's not an idea that just arbitrarily comes to some manager in the middle of nowhere. It comes to people who have a lot of understanding and connection with the people that they're working with, then brainstorming on how to improve the thing that they're doing so that those people have a better situation and they also have a profitable overall profitability, not short-term one-call profitability, but they have customers that last for years because they're so happy with the service. And T-Mobile has always been very good at maintaining very long-term customers, whereas every other cell phone company sees massive amounts of turnover. But once you have experienced 2 or 3 really tricky customer service problems that T-Mobile team of experts solves, you just don't go anywhere anymore because they're too good.
That is an amazing story. I mean, customer service is so often, the crap job, right? It's the lowest on the totem pole. Nobody pays attention to what those folks have to say.
Oh, their turnover they don't have turnover on their customer service teams anymore.
That's
because
amazing.
It's so much fun because what they're trying to do is make people happy.
Yeah. I mean, when I hear that story, it's like, wow, I'd love to be on that team with that kind of control and power and insight. And that's very cool. We don't have a lot of time left, but there's one more topic I wanted to discuss. I might have to ask for a sort of the short version about this, but when we're talking about, this creativity and knowing your customers and thinking about how to really help them get what they want so your company thrives, one of the things that people need to think about is options and sort of this options-based thinking. How can teams use options and adaptability to improve their outcomes?
Okay, so let's pretend that you have a tough problem. Options are not really an interesting thing for easy problems because easy problems have obvious solutions. But if you have really tough problems, you should never just plan on one solution. You shouldn't be trying first this try, then second, and then third, and then fourth. Tough problems should be solved with 3 or 4 sequential attempts at the same time. Because one of those options is going to be better than the others. And even though 3 of the 4 might work, one of them will work better. And if you're not trying several at the same time, you're not going to get your best shot. Now, if you take a look at when time-critical, tough problems have to be solved, people always go for options. If you can remember the coal miners in Chile that were trapped underground, the engineer who was in charge of the rescue took ideas from everybody that came and tried 4 different methods of digging a tunnel to those miners at the same time. And the one that they didn't actually expect to worked fastest. And if you take a look at the way Toyota does product design, any tough new part, they try 3 or 4 simultaneous approaches to the same part to figure out which one is going to work best in this environment. So it's not, it costs money to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. You have to get into your head that it's cheaper because you'll get a better solution to try 3 or 4 options at the same time for tough problems. It's just a way better way to get the right thing. And especially if it's time critical. If you have to meet a deadline and, anytime it's a matter of life and death, that's what people always do. Okay. Anytime it's really important and really have to meet a deadline, trying 3 or 4 options is really the only way to make sure that you get something that works.
It's not about implementing the best solution. It's about learning what the best solution might be. And you can't do that for challenging things by just thinking about it or predicting. You have to actually try it to a considerable extent before you can get enough feedback to know which is better, which is worse, what the impact is going to be on other parts of things that are going on.
Yeah.
So it's about learning. Options is really learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Feedback, learning. We keep hearing those terms throughout this book. We've heard that, and I think it so much comes back to that feedback and learning and understanding your customers. I wish we could keep talking for hours because I just love this conversation. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have. Such a fantastic, I hope everybody who's listening to this, if you don't have the power to make these sorts of changes in your company, share this video, which is going to go up in 2 weeks. Share this video with your VPs because I want to see everybody thinking about their teams and their approach to business and their approach to software development in this kind of way. Mary and Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Indeed.
Mary and Tom Poppendieck are the authors of several influential software development books, starting with 2003's Lean Software Development. And it is hard to believe, but we have made our way through the entire book that I wrote, The Art of Agile Development, and this is our last session. Thank you once again, everyone, for your support and participation in this series. I invite you to continue the conversation online on our Discord, which is available at jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2 Discord. You're also welcome to post to the Art of Agile Development mailing list, which is fairly low traffic, but posts on that list are welcome. And the list is linked from jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2. Announcements about new material, new things I'm working on, as well as the recording for this session and other sessions that are that are still coming out, are going to be available on my website. That's jamesshore.com. And you can subscribe to updates by clicking the little RSS icon in the upper right corner. Because this is the last session, I would like to close us out by reading the final few pages of The Art of Agile Development. Chapter 19, Into the Future. Agile teams never stop learning, experimenting, and improving. The practices in this book are only the starting point. Once you understand a practice, make it yours. Experiment with alternatives and seek out new ideas. As you become more fluent, deliberately break the rules and see what happens. You'll learn why the rules exist and what their limits are. What comes after that? That's for you to decide. Agile is always customized to the needs of the team. In the Agile Fluency Model, Diana Larson and I identified a possible 4th zone, strengthening. If you look carefully, each zone represents a different expansion of the team's circle of control. Focusing gives the team ownership of its tasks. Delivering gives it ownership of its releases. Optimizing gives it ownership of its product. Strengthening continues this trend by expanding teams' ownership over organizational strategy. People don't just make decisions focused on their teams. They come together to make decisions affecting many teams. One example that's starting to enter the mainstream is team self-selection. In team self-selection, team members decide for themselves which team they'll be part of, rather than being assigned by management. Sound crazy? It's not. It's carefully structured, not a free-for-all. See Mamoli 2015 for details. I've used team self-selection myself, and it's surprisingly effective. The results are better than I've seen from traditional manager-driven selection. It leads to teams that are highly productive out of the gate. The strengthening zone is about this sort of bottom-up decision-making. Governance approaches such as sociocracy and holacracy are experimenting in this space, as are companies such as Valve Software, Semco, and W.L. Gore and Associates. Uta Eckstein and John Buck's book, Company-Wide Agility with Beyond Budgeting, Open Space, and Sociocracy, goes into more detail. For a lighter weight introduction to the philosophy, see Ricardo Semler's Maverick. It's a fascinating account of the author's revitalization of his company's management approach. That said, the Agile Fluency Model has never been a maturity model. You're not required to pass through the zones in order or to achieve fluency in every zone. Although individual practices such as team self-selection have their place, I suspect full strengthening fluency is inappropriate for most companies. But if you want to live on the cutting edge and join the ranks of the innovators who made Agile what it is today, the strengthening zone is one place to start. Beyond that, who knows? There are additional zones waiting to be discovered. Ultimately, though, Agile doesn't matter. Really. What matters is success for team members, organization, and stakeholders in whatever way they define it. Agile practices, principles, and ideas are merely guides along the way. Start by following the practices rigorously. Learn how to apply the principles and key ideas. Break the rules, experiment, see what works, and learn some more. Share your insights and passion, and learn even more. Over time, with discipline and experience, the practices and principles will become less important. When doing the right thing is a matter of instinct and intuition, finely honed by experience, it's time to leave rules and principles behind. It won't matter what you call it. When your intuition leads to great software that serves a valuable purpose, and your wisdom inspires the next generation of teams, you will have mastered the art of Agile development. That's it, everyone. Thanks for watching.